France is turning to the right. France's far-right party, the National Rally, is leading in the first round of parliamentary elections in the country, delivering a crushing blow to French President Emmanuel Macron's Central Alliance. In Sunday's election, the National Rally, the nationalist anti-immigration party, received a third of the overall vote. They were in first place, followed by the center-left New Popular Front coalition, which came in second, and then Macron's centrist alliance came in third. So the right was in first place, then the left, then the center Macron party. These results confirmed that the right, which has not seen a government in France since World War II, the far right, is no longer on the fringes of French politics at all. Now, the second round of voting will take place next Sunday, July 7th.
Polling projections suggest the National Rally will have the most seats in the next National Assembly, the lower house of the French Parliament, but it is unclear whether it will receive an absolute majority of 289 of the 577 seats, according to the Associated Press. Supporters of the National Rally, including the party's former presidential candidate Marine Le Pen, were ecstatic over these results. Demonstrators on the other side of the aisle took to the streets in Paris yesterday, protesting a likely far-right takeover in the French government. Yeah,
more than protesting, there was some property destruction in a lot of places as rioting commenced following this result. So it could still be the case that Macron's coalition and the progressive left parties that came in second place are able to form some kind of agreement to have Macron, or I guess someone else in that coalition, retain power. So it's not over for Macron by any stretch of the imagination. However, this is how a parliamentary system works. There's actual vote trading and coalition. Imagine if that were possible. It's not just a absolute winner-take-all binary that we enjoy here in America. But as for now, the right was winning, which is, I think, a really stunning rebuke of the kind of centrist sort of government that has dominated in France and in Germany and in the UK and other European places, are really reeling from the fact that the people are dissatisfied with whatever ideology you want to call it, centrism, neoliberalism, globalism, cosmopolitanism. There is a sense among the people of Europe that these policies are not working.
It's more than just the policies, right? It's a sense of identity that feels under threat, and part of what right-wing movements do around the world, here in the United States, elsewhere, is say, they make an identity that is very much limited. And there's an us and them version of it, right? There's we are French and you are not. You who keep coming in are to blame for our inability to figure out how we want to do our socialist system right over there. They have aging populations. Oh, we have one of those too, that are challenging their ability to provide things like their version of healthcare. Similarly, how our healthcare system here and Social Security, I guess, as the thing that people can rely on as they're aging. Social Security is going to be bankrupt because it was designed to help an older generation off of the backs of the labor of a younger generation, right? And that is just not sustainable over time. That's the policy piece, right? That needs to be negotiated, figured out, and sorted out. And when it was done by Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, and they figured out a medium-term compromise, they did it in a bipartisan way, bucking what their parties had wanted to do and their party's ideological line. So this moment does not bring forward that type of bipartisan, let's work together on policy. What moments like this internationally bring forward are these concerns about who you are and how your life's going to be in this economic environment for an entire generation. We're seeing all of these massive upheavals globally, and some people find it politically advantageous to turn that into a fear-based rather than a coalition-based argument of how you should live as a society. So I say this because what makes Marie Le Pen far right and of concern to so many people and resulting in the protests that you're seeing is so much of Germany and France and these parts of Europe have relied on migrant labor, educated migrant labor specifically in Germany, but that is also then challenging their sense of, well, who do you welcome into the country? Who are you? Like, how do you do immigration? And Marie Le Pen's answer is, French, if you are French, you have to be white, you have to be Christian and you cannot be an immigrant.
Look, I am a lot more supportive of immigration than other people on the right in general. In fact, I did a big debate last week for Zero Hedge on X on immigration, where I took the America should have more immigration side.
Legal immigration.
Yes, more legal immigration. I would like to make legal immigration easier because in the U.S., we need people to come in and to work and to contribute to our society and help build houses. And a lot of the fear-mongering on immigration is not true in America. It's not. We have the crime problem we have in some of our cities is not substantially due to immigrants at all. If you just look at the statistics of who's committing the crimes. In Europe, I will say, I still remain supportive of immigration. Europe is facing a different immigration system than the U.S. The U.S. has waves of Hispanic immigrants coming up through Mexico from our south who actually have a lot in common with us culturally, who are actually more likely to be Christian than the underlying population of the U.S., who are fleeing socialism, who are hardworking and believe in the American dream and entrepreneurship. Europe has faced wave after wave after wave of Islamic refugees from the Middle East, given all the chaos going on there. And I think a lot of people in Europe have a sense. It's not. I wouldn't say it's an identity-based sense, but it's based on the actual creed or the actual beliefs of the people coming in. And to my mind, while I'm not an expert, I think the crime issues being faced in Europe can be more directly tied to the migrants coming in those cases. That there are a lot of examples of crime in those cases.
All right. Wow. So. The majority of the American population right now is a-religious. Look at Pew Research, the more and more people are just declaring themselves that they believe in a thing or a being, right? They believe in something, but they don't ascribe to a particular doctrine. Americans. Oh yes, vast, and it's increasing, and it worries people who run faith communities, right? They're like, how are we losing such a big population? But that is the majority of the American population right now. So to say that
the people pouring into Europe are not irreligious. They're very religious.
To say that Hispanic or Mexican Americans coming in because they are Christian have more in common with Americans is a very flattening, incorrect argument about how America is and how it works, and frankly how Americans have treated Latinos and Hispanics in recent generations. So that's just a factual statement I'm making about data there. Another data point to bring in is Germany welcomed Syrian refugees, which was the big start of the migrant crisis of Muslims. I think you call them Islamists, and actually Syrian Christians too. So lots of Syrian Christians and Muslims. And shocking, this may be shocking to you, but actually many people in the Middle East are also a-religious. It's just generally a broader global trend.
Many people in Europe are a-religious. The people coming in are more religious. So if you want to foster this secular society, it seems to you that's very important, secularism. So you're not going to have that by taking in millions of Islamic refugees.
So the refugees coming in from the Middle East are Arab. To say that they are all Islamic is false. To say that they are all identify as Muslim is false. So back to my data point, Germany welcomed Syrian refugees because they are, by and large, were a more educated population, and what Germany needed at the time was more engineers. A labor force that was able to do the things like, build more bridges, do all the infrastructure development they needed. So they were deeply welcoming of Syrian refugees and actually have an example that the United Nations uses now of how refugees can be integrated into society. And, immigration can happen in ways that make sense for local populations and the migrants. Bigger picture here, and what we're not capable of addressing in these far-right conversations or in the current political dynamic is the fact that the number one crisis we have in the world, climate change, I get that, but in terms of people, is the movement of people that will happen because of conflict, because of famine, and that is only increasing. We have 70 million people in the world who are displaced. That is one of the root causes of migration that we have coming in from Latin America. So when you are a leader in a country, how are you going to tackle these problems as part of a global community? Because pretending like these are not global problems where what happens in Ecuador or what happens in Honduras no longer affects the United States, right? So yes, of course, there's the version of we can pretend and just say it is not our problem. But as you mentioned, there is a way that immigration can be helpful to a country and it can be additive to a country if you actually bother to legislate and make those policies rather than saying just blame all your problems on the brown people from the South, which is effectively you're saying don't blame the brown people from Latin America for American problems, but it's okay if Europe blames the brown people from the Middle East.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yes. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we understood that as your brown co-host for today, Robby.
You care a lot about having a secular society. That's come through in your. France does too.
I also, but I want to say that
when it's taking tons of new religious people into the country. They're concerned if you're concerned that they won't have a.
You went to Catholic school.
I'm pretty secular. I'm not a.
I believe in secular societies,
Catholic,
but I am.
So do I.
I do believe in communities of faith. I will just leave it at that. So I do very much believe in communities of faith and what they can offer for families and for communities, but not at a government structured level. We mentioned this. We talked about this before.
Sure.
France, which is why you say you know this about me. France has a freedom from religion. It should not change that as part of its laws. America has freedom of religion.
Right.
Right? There are ways that then means how you comport yourself in public and all of that. Abiding by the laws, great. But the fact that you have entrepreneurs who are coming in, France, for example, who are offering cheaper cuts of meat than French charcuterie, and French citizens are flocking to those restaurants or those butchers because they are cheaper cuts of meat, and instead the far right wants to regulate against that. They want to regulate against that because they say this is destroying our French national heritage of charcuterie. So it is entirely based on the fact that those cheaper cuts of meat happen to come from Muslim business owners. That's what that is. That is not a free market way of doing any kind of economy or embracing the opportunity that, frankly, your own citizens are saying they want. It's about maintaining a purity of national identity.
I mean, there's a reason that the right is winning these elections. The citizens
because that is
are
a
saying
very potent message.
Call them all racists. See if that works. It's not going to work. The leaders, if you want an open immigration policy, as I do, the leaders have to explain why that's going to be beneficial for the country and have to be reasonable about it and have to understand and be sympathetic to the idea that assimilation does need to take place. And we can be a little bit, I even believe this in America, we can be choosy about which immigrants we come in. We have to have intense screening for criminal backgrounds, for terrorist affiliations, for all of that, because we need to keep our communities safe. Or there will be even more intense anti-immigrant sentiment. I don't want there to be intense anti-immigrant sentiment. As I've said, I think immigration is a good thing. It's economically clearly a good thing. There's no real debate on whether it's a good thing economically. But we have to do it in a reasonable fashion so that people are not alarmed by it, and that it doesn't some vast new influx altering the culture and the DNA of the country. That's less likely to happen in America because America is a more diverse place than Europe. America is a diverse place. America has, like you said, a lot of different people from different religious backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds. My ancestors came over from Italy. They weren't considered white people. They were considered minorities. They were treated like dirt. The Irish were treated like dirt. Now those all get lumped in as white people, but no one until modern times ever saw these different people from all these different countries as just like white. They're fundamentally different. They were hated, but they contributed constructively to the DNA of the country and are part of the story of how America came to be. We want that to continue to be the case, and I want that to be the case for people coming into Europe. But it is causing some issues, and it's not. I don't think it's constructive or helpful to pretend that there are no issues, that there will always be pleasant and it won't be messy, or to say that you're racist or you just hate brown people coming to the country if you're worried about crime in your neighborhood.
Interesting, because there's so much in what you said that I hear and understand and feel about how you talk to a population and help people as leaders, what leaders should help people understand. Right. Reagan, his last speech in the White House was about the value of immigration.
Yeah.
Right? It was all.
I agree with him.
And it is entirely different than what you hear from America's right now, and entirely different from what you hear from what Reagan did, and had the highest number of refugees actually were accepted under Reagan, and it's declined ever since. And it's unrecognizable that what Reagan was arguing for immigration and how you deal with that in terms of integration and how you deal with that for the economy is just, you don't recognize that at all in the right today, whether in France or even here in the United States in the GOP. And that's sad. The idea that assimilation or diversity is ever easy, or that it's not going to create challenges of identity and conflict is absurd. Anybody knows that when they've gone to a new town, right? Like, these are things that you have to help people navigate, and I don't think the leaders in the right wing are helping people navigate that in ways that are productive for society. They're inflaming passions. These are potent messages that time and time again work. And to your point about Irish immigrants, they became white when they were separated from working class blacks and told that they could be treated better than black people. So we can pause on that, the idea of racial segmentation, but absolutely people become an identity or become white when often they've been put in opposition to black and brown people.
We'll have more Rising right after this.